What's up, guys? So, like Alex said, I'm going to be talking about our gut microbiomes today, but before I get there, I'm going to talk a little bit about Star Wars. So we all love stories. That's partly why we're here today, right? You don't need to look too far through the history of world literature to know that we love a particular kind of story. Stories about heroes. Maybe it's because we all like protagonists that we can look up to. Maybe it's because we're all a little bit narcissistic and feel like we can empathize with the hero's journey. I'm not really sure. But I think that it might have something to do with the fact that we tend to see ourselves as these central, self-made heroes in our own lives, the source of our own powers. When I was younger, one of my favorite stories was from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's right, like a lot of people from around the world, one of my favorite stories was Star Wars, and my favorite heroes were the Jedi. But from watching Star Wars, I learned a lesson about heroes that I'll never forget, and it's pretty ironic. It happened when watching Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And during a scene in the movie, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn performs a blood test on a young Anakin Skywalker. And he finds that the boy possesses record-breaking levels of midichlorians. And this discovery ultimately leads Qui-Gon to deem Anakin the chosen one, the prophesied Jedi who would restore balance to the Force. Now, you might be wondering, and I definitely was wondering, what were these midichlorians? I'd never heard of them before. And so to find out, I consulted the preeminent source of knowledge for all things Star Wars on the internet, Wikipedia. And I found out that these midichlorians are these tiny, virtually ubiquitous, microscopic life forms that live inside the Jedi and actually give them their ability to use the Force. That's right, George Lucas actually put that in there. The Darth Vader we know and love is only Darth Vader because of these midichlorians. And the idea that even the mighty Jedi relied on something beyond themselves for their power was truly a humbling discovery for me. And the idea stuck. The symbiosis of life, its interdependence, the individual and the hero as being part of a larger ecosystem. So browsing through TED Talks one late September evening during my freshman year at Northeastern, I made another humbling discovery similar to that of my younger self watching Star Wars. The TED Talk by Dr. Elaine Chao was titled Mind-Altering Microbes. And in it, she detailed the fascinating new science of the gut microbiome, this resident community of bacteria that resides in our bowels, and new research implicated it as having a much more integral role in our health than previously thought. Not only can your gut bacteria predispose you to metabolic disorders like diabetes and obesity, but interestingly, research showed that certain species of bacteria could also put you at risk for psychological disorders like anxiety and depression. And when I heard that, I was floored. I mean, this is mind-blowing. Here are these millions of microorganisms that are living inside of us, and they're influencing the way that we think and feel. And immediately, I thought back to the midichlorians from Star Wars. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? These microbes that are living inside of us and affecting the way we live. And so naturally, I thought, gut microbes, midichlorians, am I a Jedi? And I'm sitting there in my dorm room trying to use the Force to bring me my bottle of kombucha from my desk. Unfortunately, nothing happened. And, while our gut microbes couldn't manipulate the external universe like the midichlorians from Star Wars, I was really gripped by the idea that they could be shaping our internal ones. And so I started to delve deeper, this time looking to sources other than Wikipedia. And I found paper after paper correlating our gut bacteria to diseases as far-ranging as inflammatory bowel disease and even autism. I found a paper where they took the gut bacteria from a mouse with depression and put it into a healthy mouse, and then the healthy mouse became depressed. I mean, these are really radical and fascinating ideas, but we don't truly understand how they work. And it was clear to me that we were on the cusp of understanding a fundamental new truth about the way our bodies worked. John Crine, a scientist at the APC Microbiome Institute in Ireland, called this new research connecting the gut bacteria to our feelings and behavior a paradigm shift. And while it's true that in a very real sense, understanding this new connection between our guts and our minds is a paradigm shift, it's also true that it's something that we've always known. See, while the medical community tends to look at the gut as primarily a digestive machine, something that churns and digests and absorbs the food that we eat. I mean, that's what we all learned in bio class. Colloquially, I think that we've always seen the gut as something more. We've always tended to connect our gut to our feelings. Just look at our language. We use phrases like gut feelings. We say we have nervous stomachs or butterflies in our stomach. We say we're going with our gut when we mean following our intuition. I think that there's some proverbial wisdom here, and that it's worth reconsidering the gut as more than just a digestive machine, and actually as a sensory organ, especially in light of all this new data with the gut bacteria influencing our feelings and behavior. So let me make this case to you. Our senses serve to encode or help us interpret the external universe, and we do this through sounds, sights, touch, etc. Consider the fact then that the GI tract is the largest interface between your body and the outside world, being several times greater than all of your skin combined in terms of surface area. So if you think about it, this is your body's largest window to the outside world. It makes sense that your body might be using it to look through. Even more convincing is the fact that there are cells lining your intestinal walls, cells with receptors that detect different nutrients like sugars and fats, and yes, also signals from your gut bacteria. These cells are called enteroendocrine cells, but you can think of them kind of like taste buds in your gut. And for the longest time, it was thought that the gut only communicated with the brain through the bloodstream, either through the release of hormones or other chemicals by these gut taste buds, or indirectly through the immune system, which your gut bacteria play a major role in shaping. But recently, work by a group at Duke University found that these gut taste buds might be talking to the brain in another, more exciting way, through the nervous system. And so the prospect was really fascinating to me. Understanding how our gut taste buds are talking to our brain through the nervous system could really help us unravel these curious links between our microbes and our mind. I wanted to know more. But this is really daunting research. We know so little about our gut taste buds, primarily because of how difficult it is to study these interactions in the body. As a bioengineer, I felt like I had the perspective to help develop a tool so that we could collect data on this system. But if undergraduate research has taught me anything, it's that even the largest ideas have to start small, really small. And in my case, they started this small. What I'm holding here is a microfluidic device, or a chip. And it's basically just a piece of plastic with tiny channels in it that you can grow cells in. Over the past 3 years, I've been working in Dr. Abby Koppis's lab here at Northeastern in collaboration with Dr. Alan Goldstein at Mass General Hospital. And we've engineered a model of our gut taste buds interacting with the nervous system to help us understand how they're talking to each other in the body. So using these chips, we've grown our enteroendocrine cells, or our gut taste buds, along with cells from the nervous system. And then we found that when they're grown together, cells from the nervous system actually reach out and contact these gut taste buds. And so that alone kind of hints that they might be involved in neural signaling. But we want to know more. We want to see that if we activated these gut taste buds, would they then activate our neurons? So in an experiment that I'm about to show you, we stimulated these gut taste buds with sugar, and then we recorded the activity of the neurons in the chip using a technique called calcium imaging for my neuroscientists out there. For everyone else, basically if a neuron lights up green, then that means it's firing. And so on the right, we've activated the gut taste bud. Basically, as soon as we activated these gut taste buds, these neurons are firing immediately. And bear in mind that I told you before it was thought that they only communicate to the brain through the bloodstream, through the release of hormones or chemicals. So this is big. This totally changes the way we think about the connection between our guts and our minds. Consider the analogy to the taste buds on your tongue. When you're chewing a handful of fries, the salt in your food activates your taste buds, which then communicate through the nervous system to your brain to give you the experience or the sensation of tasting saltiness. This is happening in real time because it's through the nervous system. But imagine if this was happening through the bloodstream. Can you even picture what it would feel like to be chewing your food and there being minutes or seconds of delays before you actually tasted them? This is how we thought that the gut talked to our brain. But what I'm showing you here, and what a lot of the current work on gut taste buds is telling us, is that the gut is talking in real time to the brain in ways that we never thought before. And so I think this makes a strong case to think about the gut as really like a sixth sense. And while we consciously perceive our 5 classical senses, it's clear that we only subconsciously perceive our gut senses. But that doesn't mean they're less important. I believe that better understanding our gut senses can help us unravel these links between our gut bacteria and our minds, and help us rethink the basis of various psychological and neurological disorders like anxiety, depression, and even autism. And so I started off today talking about heroes and about how Star Wars taught me this lesson of seeing through the illusion of heroes. To see that Anakin and the Jedi weren't these people with divine superpowers granted to them, but that they were really the result of their environment, that they really derived their power from life beyond them. I believe that the lessons I learned from watching Star Wars and from the midichlorians is very similar to the lessons we're learning from our gut microbes. I think of my younger cousin when she's pretending to be Rey using the Force. And she believes herself to be the master of the Force, right? She's not thinking about the midichlorians. Why would she? She's looking at the Jedi at face value. In the same way, we go through much of our lives without ever thinking or maybe even accepting the fact that so much of what we think, how we feel, and therefore how we live could be the result of our guts subconsciously tasting or listening to what our gut microbes and our food are telling us. And to me, this is a really mystical and beautiful idea that the brain, this seat of consciousness and the self, could be so shaped and is in constant communication with these millions of microorganisms that are beyond us. It reminds me that we're not so apart from life, but we're actually so intertwined with nature beyond us than we've ever thought before. And so some of you might be listening to this thinking, cool, why should I care? Maybe you're not as mystified by this pretty deep metaphor connecting the midichlorians and the gut microbes. That's fine. The reason I love this work is because it has such practical implications for how we live our everyday lives. I mean, we are all familiar with how our food affects how we feel. We're all familiar with the feeling of being hangry. Maybe some of you are hangry right now. We're all familiar with the feeling of being lethargic after a meal. We're constantly thinking about our diets in terms of, the amount of proteins, the amount of fats, the amount of sugars and carbs we're taking in. We think of them in very metabolic ways, and they're very central to us. But I think that the science of the gut microbiome is forcing us to rethink the diet, rethink how we look at the food we're putting into our body, because there's a new character in the story. There are millions of new characters in the story. I think that in the future, we're going to be able to treat diseases in a brand new way through the gut microbiome. Already, scientists are developing prebiotics called psychobiotics, where they're looking to treat mental illness like anxiety through the gut microbiome. And just like one of the biggest successes of the past decade was the Human Genome Project, where we sequenced the entire human genome, currently scientists are doing the Human Microbiome Project, where we're finding out how variations in our gut bacteria are linked to different diseases. But while finding out what versions of a gene you have doesn't really leave you with much, I mean, you can't change your genes. Finding out about your microbial signatures is something that you can change through your diet. And to me, that's a really empowering story. And as an aspiring physician scientist, I believe that's my true mission in life, to help inspire and empower people to live their healthiest and happiest lives. If the gut microbiome and Star Wars has taught me anything, it's that we can all do that by being something like the Jedi and bringing balance to the force within us, the gut microbiome. Thank you.